CIT 16, Spring 2014. Installing Snort as an IDS. First off, we might have to split this video into two. It might get a little too long, but we'll see how it goes. Now, what is an IDS? IDS is an intrusion detection system. It's a device or software application that monitors network or system activities for malicious activities or policy violations, and it produces reports to a management station. The goal of the IDS is to detect suspicious traffic in different ways. Now, there are two types of IDS, passive and reactive. Passive, as you can probably imply with the name, is that it basically logs the information, but that it doesn't do anything about it. It logs it and it signals an alert, but it doesn't really do anything about it. And a reactive one, also known as an IPS, intrusion prevention system, responds to the suspicious activity by resetting the connection or by reprogramming the firewall to block network traffic from suspected malicious source. Do you want an IPS or an IDS? You buy an IDS if you want visibility. You buy an IPS if you want control. Now, there are many different types of companies selling IDS or IPS systems, but why choose Snort IDS product? Well, it's free, it's capable of performing real-time traffic analysis and packet logging on the IP network. It's available for most OS, Windows, and Linux-like system like Ubuntu, Fedora, CentOS, and Mac. Mac, if you guys don't know by now, is Linux. It's very much like Linux. It's gold standard. There are free rules updates. There are front ends available, and it uses logs or database. So what is Snort? Snort is an open source network IPS IDS developed by SourceFire. It can perform protocol analysis, content searching, and matching. It can detect CGI attacks, SMB probe, OS fingerprinting attempts. And what is required to use Snort? There are certain packages that you need to install before using Snort. There's libcap, PCRE, libnet, Barnyard, and DAQ. Now, ideally, you'd want to install Barnyard, but for this demo, we're going to hold off on that. Barnyard is needed if you're going to be inputting your logs into some sort of database, and we're not going to do that for today's demo. So where do you download Snort? You can install Snort from www.snort.org. The latest release is 2.9.6.1, and you'd also need to download the current rule sets. The Snort rules are distributed separately from the engine, so you're going to have to download that too. Later on in the video, I'm going to be showing you how to do that. So, now for IDS planning. Our lab network is, we're going to be using a VMware Player 6. The operating system that I'm going to be installing is the Ubuntu Linux 14.04 LTS, which is the latest release. Networking, it's a network-based IDS, and the software we're using is Snort and the Snort rules. And of course, we're going to be needing to install the prerequisites for Snort. Oops, let me see, back. So how to design an IDS? You build the Snort package into the system. You create the required files and directories. You modify the snort.conf file to reflect the particulars of our network. Our network's going to have different network ID, etc. Then you execute Snort and alert explanation. Now, the positioning on the IDS inside the firewall helps you understand attacks that originate outside your network. But since we're working on a VMware network, or like virtual machine network, we're not going to have a firewall. To run an IDS, one needs to have all network traffic available for an IDS inspection. Okay, next. Purpose. Ideally, it scans all inbound and outbound traffic, and ideally, it's to maintain the internal network right behind the firewall. It detects and provides notification only of known attacks, monitor root activities, It's to protect data and systems integrity. The goal of IDS is to identify entries attempting to subvert in-place security controls. It gathers, identifies logs and alerts, and it responds to attacks from both inside and outside of the network. Now, this is an ideal diagram on how an IDS should be placed. You see Snort here usually have two interfaces, a sensing interface and a control interface. Sensing interface is outside, outside of the router, so it picks up all the activities right before it hits the router, and it blocks attacker on the outside. So this is basically like an ideal diagram of how it should be set up. However, we're in a lab environment, and my machine only has one interface, so our lab looks like this. So we have like this host machine sort of acting as our router. This are the target VMs, the Snort VM and attacker VM. So we have our Snort virtual machine, an attacker virtual machine, and target virtual machine. So and they all reside within this one host, and then of course the router and connected to the internet. So now we're ready to install Snort on an Ubuntu operating system. If you don't have Ubuntu yet, you can go ahead and download it from www.ubuntu.com. And you just go download for Ubuntu desktop and download the flavor, whether or not it's 64-bit or 32-bit. And there's also a 64-bit for the Mac, AMD 64. So once that's done, we can go ahead and open up our VMware player. It's right there. And what you do is you create a new virtual machine, and then you go to the ISO you downloaded it to, which is I did a 1404 desktop AND. So go hit next. Go ahead and type in name. I'm gonna make it easier on myself, and I'm gonna use my username is Sheila. The password is Sheila. Hit next, and let's Snort IDS. And I'm just gonna use this as virtual disk as a single file. I'm gonna put this as a 40 for now. You don't have to. And then you can customize your hardware. So it's using 1 gig of memory, 1 processor. The network adapter, you can either use bridged or NAT. I'm gonna use NAT. That basically means that I am gonna get my IP address from my host machine. I'll go ahead and do that. Hit close, and you hit finish. And this is it's gonna go ahead and go through the install. Let me just make this machine bigger. Whoops. And I'm going to go ahead and be pausing the video for now. So it's going through the process of copying files, and this might take a while, so I'm going to be pausing every so often so that this video doesn't go for half or more than an hour or so. Let me go ahead and pause it, and I'll come back once the operating system has been installed. So it finished the installation, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. The password is Sheila. Okay. So so now we're here. We're going to go ahead and we need to open up a terminal. First off, I am going to check my IP address. Oops, it's ifconfig, not ipconfig. So my IP address is 192.168.80.142. We are going to be installing the prerequisites for installing and compiling Snort. So let me go ahead and show you what those are, And those are basically the Flex, Bison, Build Essential, Check Install, libcap dev, libnet1 dev, libpcre dev, libmysql client 15 dev, filter queue, IP tables. So we're going to go back to our terminal window. So the command for that is, let me get that out. I have it copied, so I'm just going to go ahead and do sudo apt-get and all of those information. Sudo basically gives us root-like permissions to install. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's going to ask me for my sudo password. And you might occasionally get the do you want to continue, after this operation, 47.9 megs of additional disk space will be used. And you basically hit yes because you want to be installing all of those different things. And then go ahead and pause the video here while I install all of these different things. So once that's installed, we need to get that libdnet file. And so what we're going to do is use wget. Go ahead and paste that. So it's wget in that area. And hit enter. Now, if you do an ls, you can see that it downloaded the tgz file. So we need to unpack that. So it's tar xvfc. And if you do that, it's just going to go ahead and unpack all of that into the directory. Do an ls again. You can see the libdnet -1.12. So you can tell which ones are directory, which ones are files, which ones are zip files by their color. The directories are in blue, so we're going to change into that directory. Oops. 2. And once we're there, we're going to go ahead and do a configure. I have my command copied. Paste. And the C flags, C flags equals -fpic is necessary if you're compiling in a 64-bit OS, so, and which I am, so we'll go ahead and do that. It's going to go on and on. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and make sudo check install. So it's going to ask you for documentation. Should I create default set of docs? Usually you can just use the defaults. Just enter. Okay, and then just enter again. And then, do you want me to list them? No, we don't really need to do that. And yes. So it's going to be copying this files to a temporary directory. Okay, so what we need to do is install that package. So sudo this command. And then we're also going to be creating a symbolic link that Snort looks for libdnet. There we go. So the next thing we need to do is build the DAQ files. That's the data acquisition library. And we need to download that first. So we'll go ahead and download that. Let's open up a Firefox browser. It's going to take a while. So this came up, and then we go to snort.org. This is where we're going to be picking up those files. And it's taken a while to get there, but download Snort. If you hit that button, now we came here to pick up the data acquisition files, and while we're here, we might as well pick up the source file for Snort. So we'll go ahead and download DAQ. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that, and we'll do the same thing for Snort. Okay. Now, usually when you download things from the internet, it's going to send you to a default directory. So if you go back here, you see it's going to send you to the downloads folder. Usually that's where it puts all those downloads. So we're going to change to the downloads directory. List that out. And we can see the data acquisition files and the Snort files. So basically, we're going to do the same thing that we did for libdnet, that is to expand both the DAQ and the Snort GZ files. So I'll go ahead and do that. Paste. Then if you do that, you can see CD to DAQ. Just that. And then we do the same thing that we did for the libdnet. So .configure. Make. Sudo check install. Yes, no, no. Oops. No, yes. Basically, do the same thing that we did there. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing for Snort. So first we need to go back to, so that's the listing for the DAQ file. So we're going to go back to CD, ls CD. Okay, so that's the file. So to this whole thing again. CD Snort. Configure. After that's configured, make So once that's done, we do the sudo check install. Sure. Nope. Do you want to list them? No. Okay, so there's copying. Process directory. Then go ahead and install it. And then create the symbolic link. That's there. Then we're going to go ahead and run the ld config command to so that the dynamic linker runtime bindings for libdnet and DAQs are properly set up. Okay. Now, so to verify if Snort, the version of Snort that you installed, you just hit Snort V, and there you go. So that's the version that we currently have right now. So the next thing we need to do is to configure Snort and to download the Snort rules. So what we're going to do is do a few things here. For security reason, it's recommended to create a separate Linux user, which Snort will run as. So we're going to do that right now. So sudo add Snort, sudo user add Snort directory of the logs Snort spin no login. That means it really can't log in. See Snort Snort. So there we go. And we'll go ahead and create a log directory for Snort. Sudo make there. And we are going to set the ownership for that directory, Snort. So we're going to go ahead and download the Snort rules. You can download a registered user release for free. And after we download it and install and configure, after we download it, we install and configure Snort rules. So we need to go back to our web browser. So in order to download the latest Snort rules, we actually need to create a login to Snort. So, and I did that already. So like once I created a login, I can sign in. So now we're in here. So we're gonna go ahead and get rules. I'm not a subscriber. I'm just a registered user. So we'll go ahead and download this Snort Rule Snapshot 2860. Okay. So once we're there, go back to Downloads directory, and we see the Snort Rule Snapshot. Okay, so did I do that? So there it is. This came up because it wasn't finished downloading yet, but when I did the ls again, now it finally downloaded. The full download is this red file. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make directories where we're going to be putting these rules to. So sudo make directory. etc. I'll put this in Snort. And then we're gonna go ahead and untar this rule snapshots to that directory. And we're going to create a couple of files using the command called touch. That basically creates a new file, and it's going to put those in etc snort rules. And then we're going to go ahead and create another directory for our dynamic rules. And we're going to set ownership of that to be used by Snort. And then we're going to move those rules that were untarred to the etc, so that's the main directory of etc snort. Let's do that. So now we're going to go ahead and configure the snort configuration file. So there are several editors for Linux, or for all these operating systems. Use the one that you're more familiar with. There's VI, there's Emacs, and there's Nano Pico. So I'm more familiar with Pico. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use Pico. You see snort.conf. And so this is the configuration file, and we're going to make a couple of changes. And basically, we're going to look for a few of the variables. For one thing, this home.net. So our network is oops. Here. 192.168.80.0.24. That basically means that's our network. It's a Class C network. So any IP addresses in this network, which is 192.168.80.0 to .255, it's going to be protecting that. The 255 address is a broadcast address, and this 80.0 is our network address. And any host addresses in between those will be protected. And then the next thing to do is, so the net is basically what this means is the external net is not the external network, meaning the outside world, is not our home.net. Okay, and then after that, we are going to look for let me see. Let's look for, I'm going to go ahead and Control W. So these are the rule paths. So I'm looking for, okay, I should have done the path. Okay, here we go. So we need to change these. To reflect where we've installed these Snort rules. Okay, so after that's done, Control X, save yes, snort.conf, and so we are there. So after this configuration, we can run Snort in a test mode, so by using this command. So Snort passes it, you get this message, Snort successfully validated the configuration, and Snort is exiting. So now we've already installed Snort. Next up would be how to create the Snort rules, a custom Snort rule, so that we can be a little more specific with respect to what we want logged or what we want to get alerted for. But I think I'm going to stop this video and create a new video for that. So stay tuned for part 2.